Awesome. We are now recording. Good evening. This is Jen Baudet with Creative Coast. I'm the executive director of the Creative Coast in Savannah, Georgia. And this is our happy hour this week for our online Zoom happy hours that we've been doing since the COVID-19 pandemic started. And this also happens to be the second Thursday of the month, so it's also Entrepreneurs Night. And with Entrepreneurs Night, I have been interviewing successful entrepreneurs in the Savannah region. This is actually my 12th interview. It's kind of a fireside chat. It's very informal, and basically just want to find out more about the entrepreneur story, kind of the entrepreneurial journey. Tonight, I have with me Erik with Focus Lab. And so we're going to just talk about how he launched Focus Lab with his co-founder, talk a little bit about that maybe, and then where the business is at today. And I know, congratulations, this month celebrates 10 years in business for Focus Lab.
Thank
so
you.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So Erik, welcome. Why don't you take a second and introduce yourself and maybe give a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I am one of the apparent few from Savannah who has plugged into the Creative Coast and has been for a while. I've met so many awesome people who have migrated their way here, but I have family here in Savannah. I was born and bred here. My wife was born in Pooler, and so we both have family still here. And at this point, I live in, and that's where we've been for 10 years. Before starting the business, I was a web developer on staff at a few different places. And before that, I led music at some churches and even sold jewelry in the retail market. All of that was during the hustle stage of, can I even start a business? I was freelancing a good bit and just kind of doing it for fun. And then one day kind of realized, I think I actually want to pursue something like this. So that took us, in that little, spiel, I just took us back 15-ish years or more. I don't know. But yeah, from Savannah. And so I've been aware of Creative Coast for quite some time. I've really enjoyed the different things that I've been able to be a part of through its years, and have a passion for music. That was my initial career path. And then it switched into kind of a technology future, and music became the hobby, and pursued web development, and then kind of blossomed a business from there.
Awesome. Did you ever leave Savannah for a period of time?
No, never. Not even for any kind of school or anything. Just was here.
Wow, you're like my first.
Yeah, it's not too common, it seems.
In the 2 years that I've been here, most of the people I meet have landed here somehow. A lot through SCAD, obviously. A lot because they fell in love with Savannah, but either the history, the architecture, the art scene, the food scene, being on the coast myself, right? So you are really the first entrepreneur I think I've interviewed that didn't end up here somehow. So that's really cool. I love that story. And I find it interesting that you started out in music, because when I started out my career in computers, I worked for Electronic Data Systems, EDS. I'm not dating myself, but I went through their systems engineer development program, and they would take people out of school, straight out of college, and train them to be computer scientists, computer engineers. And they looked for people that had some math and computer skills. They looked for people that had language skills, or they looked for people that had music skills, because they felt that translated. Like if you learn musical notes, it's a different language. You can learn a new computer language. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I've definitely observed that commonality trend over the years of programming and just meeting other developers. I know I'm almost to a point where if I meet a developer or programmer, it's like a 50-50 chance that they have had some kind of musical something in their background or present. It's just, that's my assumption. It's because so many of the people that I know did have a music component to their either hobbies, schooling, or something like that.
Yeah, I find it
And
very.
I am intrigued to know what that, what is it about music and code or development that
Yeah, I
is
don't.
so similar,
There's
but
probably
it's
studies out there. I have never looked it up, but I always thought it was
probably,
interesting about English and or foreign language as well, right? So
mm,
that makes a little bit more sense because if you in your head you're sort of always translating between the foreign language and your native language, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
so tell us about launching Focus Lab 10 years ago. What's the origin story? How'd you meet your founder, co-founder?
Yeah. So we met in just these days it would not be a strange way. At that point, it was a little bit strange. This was 2006, and I don't even know how, but I came across his website, and it said he was looking for Flash developers to help him with a project, and I was into Flash at the time. I genuinely don't remember how I found it. Maybe Google helped me. Maybe there was some other way I made my way to his website. I don't recall. But I saw this little call for Flash developers, and I was just pursuing freelance work. And I responded or emailed him and said, "Hey, I noticed you're looking for Flash help. Maybe I can help." We got together and talked about that very specific project, and we met at Applebee's on Wilmington Island. I think Wilmington Island. We met at Applebee's out there, and no joke, we met to talk about this project. By the end of our meal, he was like, "We should start a business," and I was like, "Whoa, hey, well, that's a little fast, Mister. I just met you." But that just is a good early first sign of how different he and I are in personalities. But turns out he was onto something. So he had design skills that I didn't really have, but I was trying to provide clients. I had development skills that he didn't really have, but he was trying to provide clients. So basically we realized, well, why don't you just design? Why don't I just code? And maybe what we end up being able to produce will be better.
Yeah.
So we were ignorant of all things business. We were 100% thinking about the craft, didn't know a lick about how to run a business or grow a business, but we were freelancing and said, maybe we can freelance together, basically. So that was 2007 when we started to really do that. And we did that for a few years and got to a point where we had enough project revenue into the future where we could confidently expect to pay our bills and keep the lights on and keep food on the table. So around April of 2010, we made that call, and May 1st of 2010 was our kind of day one of full-time self-employment.
Awesome. And you launched originally with a different company name, right?
Oh, yes. So he was, when I met him, he had this name, Ideal Design. And when we started working together, we, for some reason, felt like it sounded better to go by Ideal Design Firm. It was two of us, but we felt like that, maybe that brought some weight or carried some kind of weight. So when we actually registered as an LLC, which was 2007, we added the word firm on there, and so it's Ideal Design Firm. But when we really launched our business full force in 2010, we were actually doing quite a bit of development, and I think at the time I maybe was just personally not a fan of the word design being present, but the word development being absent, maybe. So we talked through some different ideas, and we landed on the word focus. We really liked the word focus and things that it could carry with it and imply. There was no way we were going to be able to register just the word focus. So we went off looking for a random second word that didn't get too weird, but was also vague, possibly. And we landed on Focus Lab. And so we changed our name just a month or two after starting it full time. So Focus Lab was born at that point.
I love that. Now, talk a little bit about how you guys divide responsibility now. I mean, obviously there's operations management, finance, sales, managing the teams, in addition to just, the design and coding work. So talk a little bit about
Sure.
are you both involved with everything? Do you have kind of two distinct roles? And how do you work together now with your co-founder in particular?
To jump from there to 10 years later, there are a couple things I need to fill in along the way. When we started, we went maybe, I may have the timeline a little bit off, but maybe a year and a half or so with just he and I doing everything. And we were feeling out who's better at what things other than design and code. So who's better at tracking expenses? Who's better at calling a client when they're late on the payment? Who's better at sales calls? So we were figuring those things out, and we shared a lot of the load. And as we figured it out, we settled into some informal ownership of these different, hats that we were wearing. As we grew, we realized pretty heavily that somebody needed to be thinking about the longer term, trajectory of a business, of the business. And that became me. And he focused mostly on the output of the quality of work we were sending out, that we were producing for clients. And I focused a little bit more on the acquisition of clients, the tracking of things along the way. And if you fast forward about halfway, so 5 years ago, we added a guy named Will Strawn, who joined us for business development or sales. And he was the first guy who was not a partner who was doing sales. And that was an interesting hat to take off as a founder. And he was just a fantastic fit for our culture, for the way that we think about sales development and prospecting and things like that. So good a fit, in fact, that a few years later, he became a partner. So he's actually a third partner now. And so the way that our roles are kind of divided up, I am overseeing operational things as a whole. Bill, my co-founder, still oversees what we consider our delivery team. So the folks who are actually working on the things we deliver for clients. And then our third partner, Will, is in charge of kind of sales and marketing stuff for Focus Lab. And the way that we think about our duties is really similar to the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. Comes out of the book Traction. We run on EOS, which might sound like a strange phrase if you're not familiar with EOS, but that book Traction, or the system EOS, actually has heavily informed how we've brought clarity to our roles. And so we actually don't share much of anything. We're very intentional about releasing control to one another and also to others on the team, because we feel like if we try to control so much, we won't be able to grow the way we want to grow.
Yeah, I've read Traction, and I know a lot of very successful entrepreneurs that follow the EOS kind of methodology. So for those of you that have not heard of it, I would highly suggest looking it up. That or there's some other mechanisms as well, but as you start to think about scaling and growing, thinking these things through is really, really important. I keep admitting, I put a waiting room up so that we wouldn't get Zoom bombed somehow.
Sure.
People in, get distracted. So talk a little bit about where you're at right now as far as, number of employees, customers, kind of the scale of things.
The scale of things. We are at, I want to say we're at 18 employees right now. We also just went through a kind of a pruning process from a service perspective. We actually stopped, this might sound kind of ironic, but we stopped providing development services last December. Well, we made the decision and we stopped doing it in January of this year. So that had an impact also on our size. But we decided to really deeply plant our flag in the ground of branding. And I know we haven't actually talked too much about the services that we provide, but branding is kind of where our bread and butter is, and that's the core of what we do. Development has been a part of our life from the beginning because that's what I did. But we realized that for our future, development wasn't going to be a player in the next 10 years. So we're at 18 people. We are about 60% remote. So we have an office downtown Savannah, but most of our staff actually work from home offices in other states. And well, I guess today literally, as I say, we all work from home. But typically we have about a 60-40 split there. And on the client side of things, you know, we don't really do more projects than we used to. We just do different or larger projects than we used to. We've had growth from a revenue perspective, pretty much year over year. This year is questionable, but we've had growth on that side of things, and on the I would say on the quality of what we can produce and what we do produce. But on the quantity of clients, we don't have a great number of them. At any given time, we probably have, I want to say, 8 to 12 active projects with clients, which is brought to fruition with the help of 2 project managers. I don't know if any of you work on a team where there's a project manager, and you kind of get a sense of how much work does it require for 2 project managers to kind of help get those things across the finish line. That's about the quantity of things that we're doing. We've got designers, we've got writers, we've got brand strategists on the team. We have a small ops team, and then we have what we consider our growth team, which is the sales and marketing side of things. So that's kind of our design right now. I'm not sure if that speaks well to scale, but that's what it looks like.
So then, tell me a little bit about how, I guess the transition from being kind of a full service agency to just a brand agency. You know, how did your existing customers, handle that? Do you have a development shop or development shops that you partner with frequently, such that you're meeting those needs? I mean, how did that transition go?
Well, a part of the impetus to this transition was that our own sales pipeline of development demand was decreasing.
Right.
And we had some options to invest in that area and basically cause it to increase if we wanted to go that route. But we recognized that to do that, we really needed to have a key hire. So if we were going to do that, we needed to hire a technical lead of some kind, who was not me. And after a good bit of just discussion and debate, we thought really long term about things, and there were a couple of people that we thought could do that and be a fantastic fit for Focus Lab. And those were people we already knew. We considered talking to them, but really at the end of the day realized we were trying to make it fit because it has just always been, and that maybe wasn't the best way to double down, or best reason to double down on offering the development side of things. So we made the decision to no longer offer a service that was already declining for our company. So we actually didn't really have much to do on the existing client side. We just wrapped up the commitments we already had in place and stopped selling it as a service.
Okay, cool. I was a chief technology officer for a digital agency, which is now part of Publicis, an Atlanta-based agency, and we were seeing similar things, that the work came in for branding was really, really strong, and we couldn't warrant keeping a full-time team or even a full-time chief technology officer for the technology work. But then when the technology work did come, they needed me. So I was kind of a freelance chief technology officer for an agency, and then I would source the talent if the project came through. So it was, I saw that a couple of years ago, actually, we were seeing that kind of model work. I always like to ask about the very first customer you got, because I think so many of the early stage entrepreneurs, and I don't know if any, like Phil, who's online with us, just finished up the boot camp. And so we've gone through the Idea Accelerator boot camp, we've focused on customer discovery, and now we're at a stage where we need that ever important first customer. So why don't you talk a little bit about getting that first customer? If you can share who they are, that would be awesome, and how that came together.
Yeah. Wow. So that's hard because this journey for me, for this venture, started when I was doing this as a hobby in high school. And so if I go back to the first time I made $1 on this, that was because my dad said, "Hey, you want to do this thing that I think you're capable of doing?" And I said, "Okay." I had no idea what I was doing, committing to delivering work in exchange for $200, which, by the way, purchased a wonderful 24X Tascam CDRW. So I think the first time that I had a customer was probably in college, where it was a friend who knew I was into this as a hobby, and he was a musician. And so I was frequently around both musicians and technology folks. He found me because he knew, because I talked enough about it for him to know that I did this stuff. If I go farther, I think one of the early customers that we had as Ideal Design Firm was a local real estate agency that doesn't exist anymore, but I don't even remember how we found them. I just remember going to meet with them as this just clueless 20-year-old, no idea how to run a business kid, maybe a little older than 20, I don't remember, but something like that. And sitting around a boardroom table with 6 people dressed in suits, and I'm dressed in the best suit I had from when I worked at Zales, and trying to tell them that they can trust me to build their website. They grilled me with great questions. I was not prepared for any of them, so I was trying to figure it out on the spot. They on the spot asked for a price. I on the spot made one up, and we negotiated the dollars. Like, it was all so foreign to me. But at the end, they said, "Okay, put it in writing and send it to us. We think we'd like to do this." And so I don't remember how I found them, but something in that conversation apparently gave them enough trust, or maybe there was a low enough risk, I don't remember, for them to hire us. But yeah, it's hard to talk about a first customer, just because of how far back this goes. And if I were starting a business today, I would approach the first customer much differently, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's kind of hard to answer that.
All right, then why don't you talk a little bit about your sales cycle today? Like, how do customers find you? What's the, lead time look like for projects,
Yeah.
percent, likelihood to close from first meeting to, how many meetings does it take?
Right. Yeah. We have a lot of our customers are referrals or repeat business because we, if I may say so, do a pretty good job. And so we have happy customers. And one of the things that we really try to put some good energy into is nurturing those referrals and repeat business by just staying connected and staying in front of existing customers. We have spent a number of years sharing our work online, so we've got some good, just organic weight to the content on our website. Early on, we realized how much value there was in just writing about things we know about, which at this point it has a name, it's inbound marketing, but at that point it was just a blog.
A blog. You got a blog.
And that was instrumental to some of our early growth, was simply writing and sharing freely about things we know about that could help someone. And that helped establish us as experts in a few different areas. And when we become that, if a company is talking to somebody about a service that person or company can't provide, they might say, "But I know Focus Lab does that." And so just trying to become top of mind to not just our ideal client, but also to our peers, was really helpful. And in particular, there's a website called Dribble that has been pretty significant for us. It was for a certain period of time. It's less so today, but basically we just pumped a lot of content, a lot of work onto this platform where people were looking for designers, or for brand designers in particular, and UI designers. And that was a big part of how we got in front of new clients. At this point, we actually we don't, not to say this is how I would advise all businesses, but we do no advertising. We don't do any Google AdWords stuff. We don't do many traditional means of advertising and marketing. It's nurturing relationships, and one of the most fun things to see and hear is when we get somebody come into our, either calling us or into our inbox saying, hey, we spoke 6 years ago, or we spoke 3 years ago, and you told us we weren't a good fit, or you weren't a good fit for us for these reasons, but you left an impact on us. We've saved the money. We feel like we're in the right place, and we want to work with you now. And so, we just try to leave a good impression. We try to serve people well, and turns out that in a lot of cases that helps out for us.
Yeah. Love that. I think do good work, treat people right, they'll come back. Talk a little bit about, since you're 60% remote, talk about kind of how you manage staff in a remote world, since we're all trying to figure it out right now.
Yeah, I got to say, that was one thing that we were grateful to not have to try and figure out on the fly as the world changed a couple of months ago. We were already well acquainted with most of our meetings being virtual, at least in some portion. And over the past, I'll call it maybe 7 or 8 years, 90+% of our customers have not been in customers for almost all of our existence. Right. So managing, growing a staff, I feel like there are probably quite a number of great blog posts that have been written since, mid-March on the topic that are worth looking at. But off the cuff, one of the first things that I think is important to how we're able to do stuff is to understand the value and the risks of digital communication. It's tempting to just kind of type in Slack or type in some form of, email or something that's just text-based, but we miss so much of the actual communication by just reading words. So, we do a good bit of this, video conference-based conversations. We use Slack daily and often, but it's so easy to get misunderstood or to misunderstand if you just lean on that wholly. So we make liberal use of video conferencing for Zoom. We've been fans of Zoom for a long time, and use that for all of our client meetings, all of our one-on-one meetings with a manager and a direct report, our full staff meetings that we do. It's all Zoom, and we try to create an environment where we recognize with one another, this text part's not working today or right now, maybe we just need to get onto a video call and really talk through this thing. So I think one aspect of just knowing the value in that and leaning into it, not shying away from being on camera for some conversations. We also, I think we probably have more frequent touch points because we are physically apart, than we might have in an office. We try to replicate the running into someone in the hall, so to say, through our digital communication. But I think a lot of it just stems around being human and staying connected to other people. You miss a lot of that when you're virtual, and so to the best of our ability, we try to use technology to create that virtually. And we also get together in person. Even if we were fully distributed, we'd be getting together in person a couple times a year probably. And that's also a huge help to bring everyone together a couple times a year as a staff. When somebody joins Focus Lab, their first week is typically in Savannah with us. And if their team leader is a remote person, they'll typically come in as well. And so the first week is actually in person together. That's usually really helpful.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So yeah, those are just some of the things coming to mind.
Very cool. Back to customers, and you may have said this, you broke up for a second. What percentage of your customers are outside Savannah?
Almost all of them right now.
Yeah.
We still have some local customers from time to time. I think most recently our work with the Eichholz law firm was our most recent local customer. We probably have one or two a year, it seems, these days, which, you know, is 10-ish% maybe.
That's interesting. When I first came to town 2 years ago, when I was meeting with people, I was asking, especially for the services-based, you know, agencies and shops like that, I was asking what percentage of your customers are local. And the ones that were scaling and growing like you, the typical number was 80% of my customers better be elsewhere. Otherwise, I don't get to charge the rates that I want to charge. I don't, you know, the value of what I do here is not perceived as high as what it is in other places. So I have to focus on finding global customers instead of local customers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, right now we have, I want to say right now we only have 2 active projects that are not in the US, but at any given time, we usually have at least 1, maybe 2 that are also not even in the US.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So you guys have not taken any outside cash. Is that correct? Any outside
Right.
funding or yeah. Not even like IDLE or PPP, or have you gone over after some of the?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the PPP one, we pursued that early and very intentionally. We, in fact, one of our clients who's not just in the U.S., they're a worldwide business. They were hit tremendously when this stuff started. You know, they serve 3 audiences mostly. They serve the retail world. They're a SaaS company, and they provide software for retail environments, for restaurants, and for healthcare. So their healthcare went up, but 2/3 of their business went down. And they were one of the first clients who said to us, we need to pause some work. We need to do something because the world we're getting hit. So we have been, I've lost track of what week number we're on, but we are currently basically operating from the PPP loan,
Excellent.
which will ideally in large part become a grant. So, but we'll cross that bridge when it gets here. But yes, we did receive that.
Excellent. Excellent. No, I think it's important that people try to at least, I mean, even for Creative Coast, I was able to get a little bit.
Yeah.
To,
yeah. It's,
it works for nonprofits too. So why not?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So the next question is more like, you know, at what point were you like, okay, this thing's really working? Like, I wasn't sure. I launched this thing.
Yeah.
You know, how long did it get to the point that you were like, okay, this thing seems to be working. I feel pretty good about it. You know, we got this.
Yeah. So because we just hit our 10-year anniversary, I did kind of a presentation. We did a presentation for our team, the little timeline of the past 10 years, basically. But really, we did a timeline of the past 14 years from when my co-founder Bill and I met. And so because I just went through that process, I actually know very well when this happened. So we had, Bill and I started working together, co-freelancing as we called it, in January of 2007. And we went until about August of 2009. And August 2009, we had a few months in a row where we were like, this could have just paid our bills. This actually was really good. And so he quit his job. My partner, Bill, quit his job in August of 2009. And then we went a little bit longer. And I had a family at the time. I had a wife and a daughter, and he did not. So it was easy, a little lower risk for him to go ahead and take that leap. But we got to around February of 2010, and we had a project that really seemed promising. It was essentially a paid discovery where we were doing some research. And ideally, at the end of it, we would propose a larger project. And if that project signed, we knew we had about 3 or 4 months of very predictable revenue that could keep us fed, keep the lights on without my day job in the mix. So we actually closed that deal. We landed that project in April, and I put my notice in, and we went full time. So I'm very data motivated or inspired. That's a nice way of saying I rely on it, maybe even more than I should sometimes. But I had numbers in front of me that really showed me we can do this. So we're gonna take the leap.
Awesome. Where are we at as far as time? 6:35, right? So what has your biggest challenge been? Mocha has joined me, by the way. Mocha likes to, when there's a lot of people on the screen, she likes to join.
Nice, very nice. My biggest challenge. So I imagine I can interpret it, but are you curious from a business perspective or personally or both?
Primarily business.
Okay.
Most of the communities are aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, so they're always, looking for the path forward as far as their own entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. My biggest challenge so far at Focus Lab has probably been because this was our first attempt at building and growing a business. It has taken both Bill and I time and experience and mistakes to figure out what does it actually mean to delegate and to let go of some things so that we can grow. We could have done things in a way where we held on tightly to more aspects of our business. But I think the biggest challenge that we've both had and that we've had as a business is understanding that really the power of good delegation and allowing someone else to take ownership of a piece of something. And that's not ownership in the literal sense of like equity, but like just, mentally take ownership of something. It has, we've tried that in a number of ways where it didn't really pan out, and we've learned from them. And I think we've known and understood our crafts respectively for quite some time. But this idea of leadership and kind of casting a vision of what's ahead and uniting a group of people to go after that has been extremely rewarding, but very challenging.
Yeah, delegation is so hard, but really, if you want to hire top talent, yeah, I know I'm talking. If you want to hire really awesome top talent, like if you don't kind of set the vision and say, hey, go figure it out. Like you go figure out how to do it. Here's where we're headed. I need you to figure this out. Go figure it out. You end up losing the really strong talent. They have to have their ability to create it meaningful themselves. So
right.
I've always, when I left my last job and ended up here, the guy that took my place calls me to coffee like 6 months afterwards, and he's like, you hired entirely unmanageable people. I'm like, yeah, I wasn't trying to manage anybody. I was just trying to lead. My job was to lead them. They each had their own role, and you figure out how to do it. We'll meet weekly and talk about how things are going and what's working and what's not, but I don't want to own it. It's, and he's like, he wanted to hire people that he can manage. I was like, I guess the organization's going to look a lot different in the future. So, I also have a big belief that success looks different to different people. Like everyone's view of success is different. And so I'm wondering what success looks like for you, possibly for you personally, as well as for Focus Lab, because that's 3 people.
Yeah.
Success. So what is success?
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree that success looks different for each person. And I love talking to people about what success looks like to them. So I appreciate the question. For Focus Lab, success is, we actually have it kind of, we try to stay away from acronyms when we can, but we definitely have an acronym for this one. It just so happens that it worked out to a really useful word. But the principle that we have is we want to create unforgettable customer experiences, and success for us is being able to do that time and again for people we really love working with. And I'm saying this in language that we don't really use, you know, in terms of how we paint this picture for people within our team or even in a sales call, but vaguely speaking, that's kind of what success looks like for Focus Lab. And the acronym that we have is SAUCE, which works out because we talk about our secret sauce.
Yeah.
And really, it's not much of a secret, but the SAUCE word stands for seek to achieve unforgettable customer experiences. And we believe that that is going to be valuable, not just for us, but also to our customers, of course. It is valuable in a lot of ways. And we think that success is not just the idea of a customer experience that's unforgettable, but one that we can even measure. Sort of inspired by some of the EOS principles, we actually are trying to measure unforgettable experiences right now. And there's, you know, a lot of different things that go into it, but it's kind of fun. So right now, success for 2020 there's a number of unforgettable customer experiences we're trying to reach. And we also have a roadmap that goes out multiple years. That is a bigger number of, you know, unforgettable customer experiences. But success for me personally is a very different answer. And I've found that my answer for this idea of success has evolved. So I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to evolve. Right now, success for me as Erik is, and this is kind of circular, but success is keeping success defined as the journey itself and not the end. So it has to do with presence, just being fully present with someone or with others. And again, it's circular in definition, but my success is if I can keep success's definition as the journey itself. A lot of that is, I get to a point in describing it where it's hard to avoid how much that perspective is impacted by my faith, but it's heavily impacted by that. And my take on it right now is that a number, whether it's a revenue or an exit or a milestone of life of some kind, that I don't really want that to be my ends. I want to be thinking about the now, or the present, the journey. So again, a little circular, but success for me is keeping an eye on the moment, the now that I've got, because I'm not guaranteed tomorrow.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. It's so hard. It's been, actually, I found it easier these days to be a little bit more present. Being at home and watching what's going on in the rest of the world, and being so grateful to be in this beautiful place that we live. Sheltering at home in a beautiful place, not a tiny 600 square foot apartment where the cops are driving up and down the street with bullhorns telling you to stay at home.
Yeah.
Right? So I feel pretty grateful in the present moment today. I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So if anybody has a question, you can go ahead and start putting it in the chat room, and we can call on you. But so you've been at it 10 years, 10 plus, really 14 years.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of either entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience. So what, you know, tips do you have for them?
Man, too many. So if I could maybe leave one, or lead with one, it's hard for me to adequately describe the value that I have received from books or the span of these years. It didn't start that way. I've actually never really, I did not consider myself a reader for a long time, but I went to an event that it just changed my perspective of books. So I decided to, excuse me, I decided to just give it a shot. I found a business book. I'll read this business book and see if it's helpful. I really liked it. It got me thinking about things I'd never considered. So then I basically decided to read another business book. And I'm broadly categorizing these as business books. And I really got hooked into reading. And it took me a number of years to realize why I was so engrossed with this idea, which for me was new, this new idea of reading. but I realized that I was not reading just to gather information, but rather to receive or experience transformation. And so I read a lot of books, for at least compared to what I used to do. And I have just been so, I couldn't imagine Focus Lab experiencing the transformation we have over these years without the simple purchase of a $12 book here or a $19 book there. There's just so much, there's just a wealth of wisdom and knowledge in books that as long as you read it to be transformed and not just to gather information, it's remarkable what you can do with a simple book. And there are people who've gone before us who've written a lot of great observations down. And I have benefited greatly from those. So if I had one tip, I think right now it would be grab a couple of books that probably contain something that you don't know yet and read them, not just for information, but look for opportunities for transformation. Not every book is awesome. A lot of books are really crappy, and I've read a lot of bad ones. But in almost every book I've read, there has been a sentence or more that has still benefited me. And so read a book, don't get consumed by the idea of reading books, because then you're just not actually acting on anything, but just seek opportunities for transformation rather than just soaking up information.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I am going to turn it over. We've got some questions. So Dan, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hey, thank you for taking my question. Erik, last week, Bill gave a great kind of similar talk for, I think it was AIGA Detroit, and he was talking a little bit about Dribbble and how it used to bring in more business for you guys, then the algorithm changed and that's kind of dropped off. And then kind of what you said, a lot of your new business has been word of mouth from existing relationships. And I kind of posed this question to him, but I'm curious to hear your take too. How has COVID affected that new business, and in what ways are you compensating for that?
Yes. So what's up, Dan? Good to hear from you. I think there are a couple of different ways that COVID impacted it. The first was that we had some immediate new sales conversations that just hit a pause button. Folks just saying, hey, the world's kind of changing right now, but we can't tell if it's going to impact our business. So we just we're not running away, but we want to hit the pause button. We'll come back and, touch base maybe in a few weeks or so. That was the first, and I think most immediate sign that we had. And fast forward to a few weeks later, we've had a number of those folks kind of re-engage the conversation. So that's been good. We did have one active client basically say, we have to stop. We're getting hit hard, which I alluded to earlier. And then I think the other aspect is we just started getting fewer inquiries, which our assumption was that fewer people are pursuing new work as they also try to get a lay of the land, of the new land, and understand how they're going to be impacted, or perhaps some who were just already impacted. And regardless, we saw a drop in the number of leads that we were getting. To compensate for that, the first thing that we did, we had a group kind of brainstorming session that we put together where we invited our team to really brainstorm mostly ways that we can generate revenue, but a couple of also ways to maybe reduce some of our spending. But there are two things we focused on. Are there any new services we can create that are still related to our core focus as a business, that we can bring value to customers? And then are there any new ways that we can try to get in front of people with our existing services? So we had a full team, almost a full team kind of brainstorming session. There's a lot of interest for it, and it was kind of an open invitation. We did that. We narrowed that down to some of our most promising opportunities or ideas and just started to pursue those. So that was kind of how we approached the drop in our sales. I want to say that was mid to late March, maybe, where we started to really see some of those numbers. But we are now on the upswing of that, at least a small upswing. So the future is still uncertain in many ways, but we're glad that it seems like some of the things that we worked on have been fruitful. So that's kind of what we did.
Awesome. Great. Brian, you're up next.
Perfect. Thanks so much, by the way, for all of the answers so far. I know it's probably tough to just talk and talk for a solid 45 minutes.
All good.
There's a lot of schools of thought on this, and I've been exposed to them. I've had my own personal opinions, but I was curious, now that you're at kind of that decade plus mark in the business, do you guys still pitch, and do you still address RFPs if they're issued to you?
We don't immediately turn RFPs away, but we do send an immediate response that usually says, this isn't how we do our business development. We actually feel like this is a bad way to start a partnership with someone. So we have some language around that, to where we try to shift the lens that they look through from a vendor to a partner. You send a vendor an RFP, but you talk to a partner about a problem that needs a solution. And so we try to see how open the organization is to just shifting that mindset, and then us getting an opportunity to create not really a response to the request, but more of a proposal that we cater to them based on what we learn about them. It doesn't always work out. There are actually a lot of organizations that basically say, that sounds awesome, but I can't do it because of procurement and this thing and that thing. So we don't do much work with like government entities or higher ed, a lot of these organizations that actually are almost required to follow an RFP bid-based process. And we realized we were losing quite a bit of time to really trying to follow them to a T. And so we made that call a number of years ago. We just started to ignore them for a while, but now we don't ignore them. We still try to see if we can turn it into a partnership-based conversation, which occasionally is fruitful and most of the time is not, which is fine.
Awesome.
Good perspective.
Paul, you're up next.
Great. Hey, thanks, Eric, for doing this. Just curious if, over the course of business in any regard, conventional beliefs that you had or things that you thought, was there anything that surprised you along the way, since the world has changed so much from 10 years ago, even just 2 years ago, in terms of the way we work or the way clients think about branding and their value on our services?
So I don't know if it was my connection or yours. I lost a few words. Is there if I could restate the question, you're asking if there's anything that has surprised me as it relates to how services have been changing in the COVID environment specifically, or like the
No, sorry, just business in general. Any beliefs that you had about maybe prospecting or the way clients interact with a partner and what they expect from an agency, what they're looking for, anything that really you maybe thought one thing and you realized that, wow, it's a totally different animal.
Okay. Yeah. I think the first thing that's coming to mind is sales. The first time I was exposed to sales training was in a retail atmosphere, and I didn't even really care for the training. It was just very, it felt very manipulative, in the way that they would kind of equip you to speak to somebody you're trying to sell something to. And that's not to say that all retail sales training is like that. That's just what I experienced. I kind of assumed and expected that selling to people was going to be a battle of who's going to win. Am I going to win, or are you going to win? Is the client going to win because they talked me down a price? Am I going to win because they accepted the first price I gave them? It felt kind of like I kind of expected it to be almost like the combative stage of business in a way. And I felt kind of similar with the legal side once I got far enough to, or maybe just smart enough to start including legal terms in our contracts and needing to have them negotiated occasionally. But what what surprised me and what I've been delighted to continue to see is how many businesses see those things as collaboration and not contest, or so the way that we approach sales is not very salesy. If we're doing it well, it feels a lot more like two people sitting next to each other at a table with some plans and maybe some scratch pieces of paper, and you're figuring some stuff out together, rather than sitting across the table and I've got something, I'm going to slide it across, you're going to take a look at it and go, nope, and scratch it out and slide this back over. So if we're doing it right, I think the thing I've been most surprised by is how many businesses welcome and are happy to participate in a collaborative approach to sales or to legal negotiations or things like that. Now, that's not everyone, but I assumed that no one was operating that way. And it was just really nice to learn over time that more often than not, at least the people we're talking to, they really value that tone of a sales process. And I don't know if that's distinct at all to us. One of the things that I often wonder, how much of our success is in spite of me? I don't know. I think sometimes my own ignorance makes it hard to answer some questions fully, because maybe the way we do it is just not normal. I've never had a business before Focus Lab, so that's always a possibility that we just do some things that are weird. But I think that's what's coming to mind. It's just the idea of collaborative sales conversations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? If not, we're going to go ahead and sign off. So thank you, Erik. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to reach out and get some of those books that you'd recommend and share them on the Creative Coast website.
Awesome.
Under resources tab. And then, so thanks everyone for participating and attending. And we will, next week's sessions we actually have 3 events next week. Boy, let me see if I can do this.
While she's looking at Erik, we love the way,
yes,
but everyone on my team loves the way Focus Lab positions their case studies as well. So huge, and it's definitely fantastic. So appreciate that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
It helps with the word of mouth for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I don't.
And Jen, thanks for having me, by the way. Thank you for inviting me to do this. It was fun.
No problem. We have Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon, we're doing lunchtime topics. We have a topic on podcasting, intro to podcasting this coming week on Tuesday. And we have, okay, let me get to that week. On Thursday, we have the Tech SCV lunch and learn with Mark Sutton, who's a global brand manager, product marketing expert. We also have a special event on Wednesday at 4 that's really targeted towards how to build resiliency in a tech organization during COVID-19. And I haven't chosen what day our happy hour is going to be next week yet. So that'll be in the newsletter. Hopefully you're all on our newsletter. And we can go from there. So thanks for joining. This will be on our YouTube channel sometime tomorrow. So for people that missed it, it will go out in the newsletter as well. So thanks everyone. Have a great evening.
See you. Bye everyone. Stay safe.
Jen, can you hear me? The drawing.